Many centuries ago, a wise man traveled the world. He was trying to deepen his understanding of the nature of man, and he came across a construction site. And centuries ago, a construction site did not look like a construction site today. He saw some workers doing the most menial and exhausting task. They were picking up big rocks and breaking them into smaller rocks, approximately the size that could be usable in the construction. And he asked the first of these workers, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm breaking rocks. What do you think?" He asked a second worker, "What are you doing?" He said, I'm just trying to earn a living for my family." And he saw a third worker who was just going about the task quite a bit differently than the first two. He had an enthusiasm, a passion, a dedication to the process that was kind of strange. And he asked this man, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Can't you see, man? I am building a cathedral." And the wise man couldn't see that cathedral. He looked around and all he saw was a bunch of broken rocks. Construction of a cathedral in those days was not like construction of an office building today, where it might get done start to finish within a couple of years. In those days, the construction of a cathedral could take over 100 years. It could take many generations. You could work all your working lifetime on that cathedral and never see the finished work product. Another generation would come in for the next phase. But what accounted for that worker's enthusiasm, his passion and his dedication, was that he had vision. He was able to see the end product. As with the construction of a cathedral, changing the world likewise starts with a vision. So today I'm going to share with you a vision. I think I'm the only law firm partner on the agenda today, so it may come from a little different perspective. But it's a vision of how each and every one of us in this room, myself and each of you, can actually change the world. And when this topic was selected, I knew that it would be greeted initially with a certain amount of, skepticism, maybe even a snicker or two, certainly some doubt about how each of us can change the world. But I'm going to give you 4 specific ways to position yourself, to position your law firms, to do exactly that. It starts with a vision. Second, it starts with an observation about who we are and why us. And here's the answer to that. The people in this room are either lawyers or they are marketing professionals assisting lawyers or their firms. And lawyers know how the world works. And the people in this room know how law firms work. You've had experience with exactly that subject matter. Nothing really important in the world happens without a lawyer in the middle of it, or maybe leading it. 26 of our presidents have been lawyers, including power couples like Barack and Michelle Obama, Bill and Hillary Clinton, and before that, John Adams, John Quincy Adams, Abraham Lincoln, to name just a few. And the role of lawyers in transformation of the world is not something limited to Western democracies. Margaret Thatcher, Tony Blair, Mohandas Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, all lawyers. If these individual lawyers could accomplish what they did, visualize for a moment, have some vision of what law firms with their enormous resources could accomplish. We've been trained to inform and persuade everybody in this room to make things happen. And there is no combination of talents with more explosive potential to change the world. So how do we go about it? I said I was going to give you 4 steps. Step 1, put it in a business plan. We know something about business plans. People have talked about it already. And the main thing that we know is that if you fail to plan, you better be planning to fail. But the problem with too many of our business plans is that they aim too low. So afraid of falling short, we set goals that we are likely to succeed on. And in that respect, I think at least lawyers that I'm familiar with, we fail to adopt a technique that's found widely in the business world, and it's called a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And if you as a business liberate yourself to think about a big, hairy, audacious goal and put it in your business plan, and just basically give everyone, all your colleagues, a pass. If it turns out you don't achieve that big, hairy, audacious goal, well, after all, it was a big, hairy, audacious goal. But you need to start with having it in the business plan. And don't stop there. Number 2, adjust your management systems to recognize opportunity when it presents itself to you. Think of details like take the mundane business intake form. Most firms of any stature have a form. It's either in hard copy or electronic form that is prepared whenever a new engagement comes in the door. Think of details like adding a little box to check on that form. Check. This case has potential to change the world. And if you feel a little too timid to suggest exactly that to the management of your firm, you can pick a little bit different wording. You could say, this case has potential to set precedent, to establish new law. If yes, please explain. This will alert firm management. This will alert firm management that resources beyond those of the client may be appropriate, and maybe they're resources that the firm itself might want to devote, because after all, it's on a trajectory to change the world. So adjust your systems to show what's important to you, and your systems will show you what is important. Number 3, use special teams. The government uses special teams. You've heard of the Manhattan Project. You've heard of SWAT teams, special operations teams, Navy SEALs. The mere existence of a special team like that within your firm will inspire, motivate, energize others in the firm. How do you think rank and file Navy people feel about Navy SEALs? Heck, how do you think rank and file Americans feel about Navy SEALs? Firm management needs to identify a core of hard-charging individuals, apply some of the criteria that was discussed in our very first session this morning on who the leaders are, put them in a spot where they're tasked with figuring out ways that within the resources that the firm has, you're going to change the world. And does this step cost you anything? It costs you 0. There's only upside in the payoff. Your best people are not going to do something foolish. They're going to be shrewd about it. They're going to think of something, some way, perhaps even a small way, that your firm can change the world. The point is, through a business plan, through adjusting your management systems to recognize opportunity, through using special teams, you are going to be on the lookout and in position to change the world when you get a chance. This is a picture from Chicago. We have a park in Chicago called Millennium Park. It's right downtown. It has a very unusual piece of art. We call it the bean. It's a big silver reflective thing that looks kind of like a kidney bean, and it's a very popular tourist attraction. All of Millennium Park really attracts people every year. But not so long ago, that very ground was nothing but a declining railroad yard, a deteriorating piece of real estate that had little use to the railroad companies that once used it a lot. And so the taxes on it were getting high. the city was thinking about condemning it, and our firm, which has always had a very important railroad practice group within the firm, attended a meeting at one of the railroad companies that day, and one of my partners said, why don't we donate it to the city for a park? And from that initial conversation in a boardroom on Michigan Avenue, eventually grew Millennium Park. This was a change of the world, and it was a change of the world, at least in Chicago, by a law firm that's comparatively small by Chicago standards. We have about 120 lawyers today. We started with 6 back in June of '83. But by Chicago standards, that's a small firm, but we take some pride in having this little stitch in the fabric of our city. And as marketing professionals, I'm sure, I don't need to tell you, this is the kind of thing about the history of your firm, the culture of your firm, that you would want all of your people to know about, so that in a way that doesn't seem boastful, they'll have the chance to occasionally tell people, perhaps in the way that Berkey Belzer was talking earlier in your 30-second pitch. What do you do? Well, my firm tries in its small way to change the world every day. And you've then got a little story you can tell to back it up. So far, I've been talking about the bread and butter of the law firm and how it can be used to change the world. Let's talk for a minute or two about the fourth point I wished to make, and that's harvesting the profit in pro bono. There is a huge, untapped, unrecognized opportunity for lawyers and law firms to engage in pro bono and change the world. How do we currently go about approving and implementing pro bono projects? Some lawyer in the firm gets approached by somebody at his church or her church or some nonprofit organization and is asked, will you help out here a little bit? And so the lawyer, perhaps even grudgingly, seeks approval of the firm management to devote some time that would otherwise be billable time in this pro bono endeavor. And the firm, realizing that everybody's got an obligation to do it, signs off and approves it. It doesn't really matter what the nature of the engagement is in many instances. And so it's not systematic. There's no intelligent allocation of resources. It's not deliberate. We need to be as smart about our choice of pro bono engagements, our strategy to change the world, as we are about our fee-paying engagements. No, actually, let me change that. We need to be more smart about the selection of the pro bono engagements, because the world depends on that. In a competitive marketplace like the legal profession, it's a buyer's market. We all know clients pick lawyers, not the other way around. But in pro bono, it is the other way around. The lawyer can, to some extent, pick the clients. And they are plentiful, and they are grateful, and they become your partner in changing the world. You just need to never squander that opportunity. Use your resources wisely so that they get focused on harvesting the profit in pro bono. I did a little online research to find out what kind of marketing plans. Is there a template for a marketing plan that you as a marketing professional might take to a new client or to a new firm and say, okay, these are the bullet points that we need to address in your upcoming marketing plan. And I wanted to find one somewhere that included a section, how can we align pro bono engagements with the rest of your strategic objectives so that we harness and harvest the profit in pro bono? And here's the number I found, 0 that do that. This is an untapped opportunity for everybody in the room. I can't tell you for your firm what is the most appropriate use of your resources for pro bono, but I got a pretty good idea that with the talent and with the intelligence and the brains in this room, every single firm can come up with some very nicely tailored pro bono engagement that will at least position you to change the world. And There are big advantages to that. Immortality, a place in history, on a smaller scale, developing skills of your younger lawyers, organizational pride about what you're doing. You're not just engaged in mergers and acquisitions, you are changing the world. The possibility to improve the standing and stature of lawyers in our society. How much is that worth to you? For somebody that's concerned about the bottom line, the value of that is incalculable. And it begins with, the profit from it begins with that 30-second elevator pitch when you can say with 100% credibility what you are doing to change your world. Marketing involves all kinds of difficult choices. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. For one thing, you don't try to be all things to all people. So choose your pro bono investments wisely, just like the other areas that you choose to invest your resources in. And align those pro bono engagements with your core values. Our firm happens to have as its vision and as its purpose a better future for our clients. And we seek to have pro bono engagements that are complementary to that. And there are plenty of problems that you can address. But the main thing is to make a start. The woman in this picture is one of my partners. She's an alumnus of Kirkland & Ellis. She came to us, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And not so long ago, she decided that at her church, which operates a food pantry, she would start a pro bono clinic, a legal aid ministry. And she didn't really have any experience at that. Neither did I. But the two of us went out to this food pantry one Tuesday morning armed with nothing more than a clipboard and a couple of chairs, and we scribbled on a sign in handwritten notes, "Free legal services today." We thought at the very least we would learn something about what the marketplace here was. And to our, to no surprise, we discovered that it included landlord-tenant problems, foreclosures, family law problems, the occasional criminal problem, none of which we had done anything about, at least I had not done anything about in the 20 or more years since I had been a very young lawyer. But we helped 6 people that day and pointed them in the direction where they could get additional legal assistance. And today we have a team of lawyers that seemingly have just come out of the woodwork. This has to do with the leadership phenomenon that was talked about earlier. Lawyers want to be led. And so you provide some leadership to them and they will come out of the woodwork and show up. There's now the equivalent of a small law firm that operates out at this food pantry twice a day on Tuesdays, every Tuesday. And we are assisting over 1,000 clients per year. Over 5,000 people in the Chicago suburbs have gone through this legal aid ministry and benefited from it. But it started small. And you should know you can start small as well. It gives you a story you can tell in that 30-second pitch that Berkey was describing. The payoff from all of this is huge. There is a business case for pro bono. It's not as costly as you think. As I said, it's a great training ground. It builds organizational pride. And organizational pride makes people think that they are building a cathedral and that they just might change the course of history in some small way. At a minimum, it'll improve the standing and stature of your lawyers in your community. Incredible value to your bottom line. And the benefit includes never again having to wrestle with the discomfort that Berkey described when you are asked the question, "So, what do you do?" "Oh, I'm a lawyer." We can change the world. And I've talked about pro bono, but I don't want to limit it to that. Tobacco litigation is one example of a cause that was the result of a few lawyers thinking creatively and courageously, not just of themselves, but of changing the world. In the early days, there were firms that went bankrupt pursuing that cause. But gone are the days now where there was advertising targeting children. Gone are the days when there was no smoking cessation program that people could avail themselves of when they were suffering from addictions. Today, smoking rates are down, lung cancer rates are declining. Those lawyers helped to change the world. I asked earlier, if not us, who? I'm now asking you, if not now, when? We're in the fourth quarter of this year. People are starting to think about budgets and business plans for next year. This is a great time for you to think of how you can do these 4 things to change the world. I said at the outset that changing the world starts with a vision, and I want to leave you with a vision of a world where lawyers and law firms, assisted by their marketing professionals, recognize the strategic value of pro bono efforts and integrate that with the rest of their business plan with a conscious intention of changing the world for the better, positioning themselves to take advantage of an opportunity to change the world for the better. Let's visualize that cathedral for a while. Thank you.